maybe a couple miles in each direction.
Mostly from farms, or?
Yes, they were all from farms.
But you lived in, you didn't live on a farm, did you?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Did
We
your
did.
your parents were farmers?
Uh-huh.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that.
They were, you know.
Okay,
yes.
right.
And I guess I didn't have very my sister Irene and I were very close. She's just a year and 2 months older than I am. And so that was my best friend
That's always
all
nice.
year. And my sister Lillian was the oldest, and she was a little bossy.
As first childs are
like
known to be.
Yes. But anyway, I can't think of anything too outstanding in my grade school.
Do you remember what your school looked like on the inside?
Oh yes.
What did it look like? Can you
Well,
describe it for me?
it was one room, and in the back they had a pail of water with a dipper, mind you. And all of us drinking out of this
Out of the same dipper.
Out of the same dipper.
Oh my.
And we had a library, which was a little room. And
But it was a separate room?
yes, it was a small room, but we could go in and read in the library. And school wasn't difficult for me, but I think perhaps I would have done even better had I been a little older. And so.
Did you have chalkboards around
Oh
on the
yes.
wall, on all the walls, or
Well, on
the front?
on the main wall, I think we did, and we had to go up and do our multiplication problems and so on.
And did you each have individual desks?
Yes.
How big was the school room?
Well, you know, I thought it was large at that time, but now
When you're
I
little,
would think it was
everything-
very small.
Right.
I think that maybe at the most there was probably 20 students, which was a lot for one teacher to be expected.
Yeah,
because
especially
there
when
would
it's
be
all the different grades.
grades 1 through 8.
Where did the water come from that you had sitting in the back in the pail?
Well, we had to go and pump it.
Was there one right outside the
Yes.
schoolhouse? Oh, that's good.
Yes.
I learned about that when I wrote my book, because I did one chapter on historic schools, and that's why I asked you these questions too, because they're very similar. Did some research on that.
We always had, as long as I went to school there, I don't believe they ever did. It's kind of fun to drive by there now and see this.
Is the school still there?
Yes, but it's all falling apart.
Oh,
you know, it's not used
oh,
for
how sad!
anything.
I'm sure they're, it's not used, but that's amazing that it's still standing.
Well, it's still.
I suppose it's kind of near where you're living now.
Yes, well, not too far.
Wow, that's really neat. And how many years did you go to that school then? Through 8th grade?
Through the 8th grade. Then, when I went to high school, well, maybe you want to stay with the grade school.
So you were still, how long did you live in this one house in Bruce?
Well, I lived there until I graduated from high school.
So pretty much your whole childhood.
Yes, my folks owned their home. And in fact, it's fun to drive by there now. It's not too far from.
Oh, is the house still there?
Oh, yes.
Oh, I would love to see it.
Yes.
You should take a picture of it sometime and send it to me.
Yes.
I would love to see it. I would love it.
The people that live there have built on in length a little. And we had this beautiful red barn, which the people that live there, I guess their children went up in the haymow and were pretending they were smoking cigarettes or something, and that beautiful barn went down just a couple years ago.
Oh no. No, you did say though that your first house was destroyed not too long after.
No.
Which house was that? Maybe I misunderstood you. You're talking about the barn, maybe you mentioned the barn went down?
No, the house, It's still there.
Oh, okay, okay, maybe I just misunderstood you.
They built onto it.
Oh, that'd be
So-
wonderful. Is it a stone house?
No,
Oh, okay.
No.
Because I know the mayors have that
Yes,
wonderful
yes.
stone house on their farm. I didn't know if that was common. Is that common in that area
I don't think
to
so.
have the stone house?
I don't.
I had
really
never
think
seen a
so.
house like that when I was little. You know, we used to go visit. I had never
Uh-huh.
seen any house like that. I just thought that was the neatest thing.
Well, the barn was destroyed, but the house is still there.
Did you? What kind of a farm? It was a dairy farm, I would assume.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
So you had lots of cows.
they did.
Did you do any? Did they do any? Raise any crops then as well,
Yes.
or?
Yes, my dad raised oats and corn, primarily for feed. Yeah.
I'm sure. And what kind of chores did you have when you were little?
Well, we never had to milk cows, and
Did
I
your dad
really-
have people come help him with that, or did he
no,
do it
he
all?
and my mother. They
Oh,
did.
really?
They didn't want us girls to milk the cows because we were afraid that we wouldn't milk them good enough so that it would sort of dry them up.
Oh, right.
So I never learned to milk a
Huh.
cow.
Well,
at
that's
all.
okay. I think you've done just fine without knowing how to do that.
Yes. My folks didn't have a big farm.
Oh, okay. How many cows did they have?
Oh, maybe they had 10 or 12.
Oh, so not it wouldn't take them that long
it
to.
wasn't
Okay.
that big. We girls were required to clean the house and
Okay.
do dishes and
Yeah, so you had a house full of girls.
yes,
So your dad didn't have much help with the men type tasks.
no. My sister Beverly was the only one that he liked to have because she was stronger than the rest of us. I never was very strong as a child, but she was his boy, I guess.
Oh, okay.
So
I suppose. Was he sad that? Do you know if he was sad that he never had any boys?
he was at the time.
Yeah.
Each time a child was born,
He
he
would
would.
hope it was a girl. I would hope it was a boy. Oh.
But Lillian, Irene, and I were born in Iowa before they moved to Wisconsin.
Okay.
I don't remember it because I
Right.
was only 3, I think, when we moved to
Right.
Wisconsin.
Okay.
And so we always hoped that he would have a son.
Oh.
But Beverly was born, and then Ruth was born. And that was all. But my parents were wonderful Christians.
So I'm sure that you went to church all the time.
Oh,
Tell me about your church that you grew up
well, when we were real little, there was a Methodist church, about a mile from our place. And I remember going there the earliest. And we walked because it was a little over a mile. And I can remember they've told me many times when I would say, "Carry me, Daddy," when we'd go home. 'Cause I was the youngest of the 3.
Sure.
So it was when I was through high school that they built a church. And Irene and I helped pay for this, building this little church, which still stands there, but I guess they're not having services or anything. It was called the Riverside Mission, was the first church.
And that was a church, tell me, I'm sorry. It was the first church that, what?
That I remember going to after my babyhood days.
Oh, okay.
But my folks were Methodist to begin with. And
And what was the mission church then? Is that,
it was undenominational.
okay.
But it was good. It gave us a good biblical heritage. I think my dad was a real Bible teacher. And we always had, in the morning, even though we walked to school, we all knelt in the living room and had prayer before we left.
That's wonderful.
So I have wonderful memories of my
yes.
parents, that they really cared about our spiritual life as well as our physical.
Do you remember what kind of things they prayed for?
Well, they prayed for the missionaries, and they prayed for us, each individually, and I can remember it being a very special time. I think that none of us could get away from that early training, and this is so important.
Did you all pray, or did just one of you pray?
Well, I can't just remember, but I think we learned to pray when we were probably 6, 7 years old. And my dad was always a real Bible teacher. So
Did he teach at the church also?
Oh yeah.
Did he wasn't the pastor of the
No.
church, but he did some teaching?
He taught the young people's class.
Oh, okay.
And I've got a picture of the young people's class, and it was probably 15, 16.
Wow.
This was before I left home. And so I've got lots of good memories about this little church that we went to. And it's still standing today, but it isn't being used.
Now, I know in Wisconsin, I'm sure they had a lot of bad weather in the winter time. Would you still walk to these places through the bad weather, or would you?
If it was too bad, my dad took us. But
took you how? In a
car?
car?
In a sled.
Oh, in a sled.
But most of the time, we girls skied, and we could go cross country across the lake, Kaylee Lake, and we skied to school, and we made a track, you know.
Oh,
so,
yes. Oh, that's wonderful.
So
you just bundle up warm and strap on your skis?
I guess
That's
so.
fantastic.
I don't think I was ever warm enough.
Oh, yeah, I can relate. That's why I don't like to live in Minnesota anymore. I don't feel like I ever warmed up for 18 years.
Well, this is true.
I understand that awful feeling. You just can't get warm.
But that's what we did because it was so much shorter. We'd go through our back field and across the lake as long as the ice was
right, and you could go so much faster on the skis.
Oh, yes.
That's fantastic.
And we girls all learned to ski because it was a matter of necessity.
Sure.
So that was the things that I can remember. That.
Did you have friends in your, I guess no one lived real close by, but in your town or in your area, maybe at school?
Well, we had next door neighbors.
Did you?
Right next to us.
Oh.
But they had one son that they had adopted, and he wasn't a nice boy ever. So I don't know if I ever remember him going to school with us. Maybe they moved by his school age. We had close neighbors, so.
Well, that's good. And so, what kind of things would you do when you played with your friends, when you had time?
I had a especially good friend. Her name was Mildred McLean. And she and I played back and forth. And we played with dolls, pretended we were mothers.
Did you play in one of your houses then?
Oh, yes.
Or where did you play?
Oh, yes. We always played in a house.
Just checking the tape, how much I have left, but we're fine.
And so Mildred and I were close friends for many years. And I guess that was the only girl near my age in our neighborhood.
Well, that's good you had someone.
Yes.
It's better than not having anyone.
I would get to go over there and stay for an hour. And she lived probably a mile.
So you had to walk over there and play?
I've enjoyed Irene, and I've driven her down through all of these roads.
Oh, that's That just must be wonderful to live
Yes,
back there again.
yes,
Yes,
it
I can
is.
definitely see why you would want to live back there.
Yes,
All
and
these
I have
wonderful
so
memories.
many memories.
Yes, yes.
And my sister Irene has always lived. She's never moved away like the rest of us did.
Ah, right.
So
right.
she knows everyone.
Right, oh, I suppose.
And of course, where I live, of course, I know most of them too.
Oh, that's great.
But I'm one of the few that aren't locals.
Now, what do you remember having to eat? Like for dinner or for breakfast or anything when you were growing up?
Oh, we always had oatmeal.
For breakfast?
Always.
Uh-huh.
And occasionally on weekends we had pancakes.
Okay. That sounds like our house.
This is exactly
That's
right.
what we have.
And I guess that was it. And we always had to pack a lunch, and I know sometimes in the difficult years it was hard to get like cold meat for sandwiches or anything.
Mm-hmm. And so what kind of things would you have?
Well, I don't really know. We had sandwiches with something in them, but I know it wasn't any of this nice sliced meat like we get
Oh,
today.
I'm sure. I'm sure. Did you have fresh fruit or vegetables or anything to bring along?
Well, we had apple trees,
Uh-huh.
so they were packed in a barrel in the winter, so we always had apples.
Oh, well, that's good. Really? So if they were in a barrel, maybe in the cellar, they would last?
They wrapped them in paper
Each apple separately in paper, and they would last?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Because I was going to ask if your mother did canning to make things last throughout the winter.
Oh yes, she
Yeah.
canned a lot.
Yeah. What kind of things would she can?
Well, she canned vegetables and
From your garden, from things that you had
we
grown?
always had a big garden.
Uh-huh.
We always had to be out weeding, and this was always hard on me. I was a rather frail child.
Oh, but see, that's why you're so good with plants now. I always wondered where your green thumb came from. That's where it came from.
Well, so we raised a big patch of cucumbers and picked them for the factory, because we had a factory not far away. But you can imagine how your hands get if you pick cucumbers. You've got just such stained hands.
Yeah.
But my sister Irene and I were the delegated dishwashers, so.
So one would wash and one would dry? Yeah.
And my sister Lillian had to clean house. She was the oldest.
Right. And so what would you have for dinner? Do you remember different things you would have for dinner?
Oh, it would depend upon the season. You know, they would have pork chops, and we thought they were wonderful, but they'd have to be right after butchering. They didn't have ways of preserving things like they did.
Right.
No. And I don't believe that my mother had a refrigerator as long as I was home, but of course she got one sometime afterwards. But, so a lot of even meat was canned.
Oh, really? Oh, I didn't know you could can meat.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow. What did they put it in? Do you remember
Jars.
what kind of solution? Is it a
Well,
salt water, I would assume?
Yeah, I would
That kind of
imagine
thing?
so.
Like a brine?
Yes, I'm sure. But everything was canned.
Yeah, yeah. So you had a cellar
We
in your house?
Yes, we had a basement.
Well, I know everybody up north has a basement. Nobody has them down here. So I know that's a silly question to ask. Everyone up north has a basement.
Yes. So I guess we ate all right. We didn't have a lot of the fancy things that my children had.
Oh, certainly. Certainly not. Did you have a lot of potatoes?
Oh, yes.
A lot
We
of
had potatoes, and we had garden vegetables that were always canned.
Now, what nationality are your parents again? I know you're
My
not
mother-
Norwegian, so.
My mother was pure Swede.
Oh, she was? Pure Swede?
Yes, her
I didn't
parents
know
both
that.
came from Sweden.
Oh, okay. And then your father?
And my father was half English
Uh-huh.
and
German
So
Swiss.
he was German Swiss.
That's the only thing I remember that I knew you were was
But-
German Swiss, but and I
yes.
knew you were something
My
else.
name, you know, is German Swiss.
Okay, right.
Kurtz.
Mm-hmm.
Now that was, but his mother was English.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay.
And she was a beautiful lady. And we had a beautiful picture of her in the living room.
Oh.
And we always felt like that she was watching over us
Oh.
and we mustn't do anything.
Oh, that's a good idea. I think I need to get one of those nice big pictures.
But and we never really knew her because she died before we, and then the relatives were all in Iowa, so.
Now, did your grandparents live here in the States?
Yes.
Okay.
My mother's parents were from Sweden, but they lived in
But
Iowa.
they had come over?
Mhm.
Okay.
And my father was, his mother was English, and his father was German Swiss.
Mm-hmm.
So I got to be quite a combination.
Yes.
So that's where the Kurtz
Okay.
name came
Right,
from.
yeah, because it sounds very German.
Mhm.
Yes.
And so, but he moved to, see, they had lived in Iowa.
Mm-hmm.
I think I was 3 when they moved, so I don't
Okay.
remember living in Iowa.
Okay.
But he wanted to get away from all the relatives with my mother. There was 13 kids in her family.
Oh,
And-
right.
Uh, he had 2 brothers.
Who's he?
My dad.
Your father, okay.
Uh-huh.
I didn't know if you were talking your
He had,
grandparents.
he had 1 sister,
Uh-huh.
and I think it was just Walter and whatever his other brother died during World War. 'Cause he died of the flu. They had an epidemic.
World War II?
No, it must have been
Early
World War One,
Oh, okay.
probably.
Mm.
So I don't remember him. So we didn't see our relatives very often, but this was one reason my dad moved to Wisconsin to get
It's
away
just to
from
kind of get
all
away.
these relatives, my mother's, you know.
Right.
He said, maybe this isn't important, but he said,
This is
every
fun stuff.
Sunday, Mom had to be cooking a big meal for company, as long as we lived in Iowa. All these relatives, and we didn't get to go to church and do the things that he felt was important.
Oh, really? Oh.
And
And he
so-
didn't want that to happen again.
He didn't. When his children started coming, he wanted us to have a real Christian education.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the reason they moved. Bought
Ah.
a little farm in Wisconsin.
Wow. Did they not know anyone in Wisconsin?
No,
They just, how did they choose Wisconsin?
I don't know that's how they did, but it was a lot of hard work.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you
But-
think, what is your fondest memory of when you were that age or grade school age?
Let's see.
Does anything stand out that something you had really a lot of fun, maybe at Christmas or birthday?
Well,
I don't know how you
I
celebrated
don't
this.
know how much we celebrated for birthdays, but of course Christmas was always great. We went out and chopped down our own Christmas tree.
Mm-hmm.
I can remember that Christmas was exciting. And we didn't get dozens of gifts either, but we would each get something special.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that even though it was difficult times, that we were loved,
Mm-hmm.
and the things that were important we had.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's good. Do you remember if you opened Christmas presents on Christmas Eve or Christmas morning?
Christmas morning.
See, the only reason I ask that is because it's an issue in our house.
Christmas morning.
And we now do them all Christmas morning.
Christmas morning.
Which is not the way we did it when I was little, and I'm not sure where that all started, so I just thought I would ask.
Yes.
Doesn't have anything to do with anything, but
Because we
I
were so excited on Christmas morning, because maybe we got one gift, but that was exciting.
Yes, it was a surprise.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, we had special times,
Uh-huh. Good.
and my folks, not until the later years did they have a lot of company.
Mhm.
because they were difficult times. But
Financially,
yes, I
Mhm.
think so.
when were they the most difficult?
Well, I imagine
I
this
mean, when it was
move-
bad weather, because so that the farm didn't do real well, or what would make it difficult times?
Well, farmers didn't have a lot of money. I can remember it was a highlight for us if we got a big package of some of our wealthier relatives would send their clothes.
Oh.
We did. This was real exciting.
Uh-huh.
They'd
Oh, sure.
send their clothes to us,
Uh-huh.
and we just thought that was
I
great.
could see that. Yeah, that'd be wonderful.
Just, especially when you think of, you see, when by the time Beverly and Ruth were born, it was a different era.
How many years later were they born after you?
Well, let's see. Beverly must be 6 years younger,
Oh, okay.
and then Ruth is probably, because I can remember when both of them were born. So you know, I was old enough to, because they were born at home.
Oh, really? I bet you remember that.
Yes.
What was that like? What do you
Well-
remember of it?
Well, I remember when Beverly was going to be born, there was a couple that didn't have children. And so we 3 girls were spent the night over at the Sewings.
Mm-hmm.
So we
When
went,
they knew that the baby was coming?
yes.
Uh-huh.
So I remember how she brought us some kind of tea upstairs to drink, and we had such a good time. And
Were you
then-
excited to have a
Oh
brother or
yes,
sister?
oh yes. And when Ruth was born, we were really excited because we were all old enough now.
Right, right.
And so they were exciting,
Yeah.
especially when Ruth was born. I was trying to think, you know, I'm so close to Ruth now because she comes back to Ladysmith. They have a home
Oh,
by the
yeah.
river
Uh-huh.
there, so
Oh, nice.
they go to Arizona in winter.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's very nice.
So that was exciting.
Okay. So tell me a little bit more about after grade school, the next
Okay.
period.
After grade school, we knew the folks wanted us to go to high school.
Mm-hmm.
So Bruce was, I believe it's 7 miles from where we lived.
Mm-hmm.
So of course we had to stay in town,
Mm-hmm.
and the first year that I went, Lillian was ahead of us, and so Irene and Lillian and I had a room at somebody's place, and we did our own cooking.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the first couple of years.
You really felt like you were on your own, and you're just in high school.
Yes.
Wow.
And I don't know just how it went. Folks would come and get us in the weekend.
Mm-hmm. Now did you stay with a family then?
Well, we would have a room,
Uh-huh.
We
Oh,
would
okay, in a home
rent
with a
a
family.
room.
Right, okay.
and I suppose that we must have had, I can't remember the sleeping arrangements, but I suppose 2 of us slept together.
Yeah.
One had a cot, I can't
Yeah,
remember.
yeah. But that's nice that you had 2 sisters to do everything with.
Yes.
You know, you never felt like you had to brave it
No.
alone.
No,
That's very nice.
no,
We'll just be a few more minutes. We're recording. Did you see his face?
but I had a neighbor girlfriend that lived almost a mile from our place, Mildred McLean,
Mm-hmm.
and she and I were such close friends.
So you went through high school?
Maybe not in high school because I think maybe she went to Ladysmith rather than Bruce High
Oh,
School.
okay.
But that was nice to have a friend. We played dolls together.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes, definitely. And so how did you feel about high school?
Well, I went because I had to.
Right. What were kids like? Other kids in
Well-
your school?
Well, you see, I never got very close to a lot of them because weekends we went home
Mm-hmm.
and we never played around after school. We went to wherever we stayed. We did our own cooking and
Mm-hmm.
had to look after ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so we never really got in with any rough bunch or anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I had some close friends, but they were probably when I got to be in my junior and senior year.
Mm-hmm. Did you, what subjects did you enjoy at school, or not enjoy?
I wish that I had been older. I would have worked harder at it.
Hmm.
And
And things probably would have been easier because you
Yes.
have that
Yes.
additional wisdom.
yes, I don't think that school was ever very hard for me.
Mm-hmm.
And must not have been my children just did well in school too. I don't know how well I did, but
Do you remember any particular subjects that you liked or didn't like?
well, one I didn't care for was English when we had to get up and give talks.
Oh,
I
yes.
would be just petrified.
Oh.
And you know, I was only 13 when I.
Yeah. Well, I would be now. Doesn't matter how old you are.
But we did have. I remember a typing teacher that I had in high school that was just. She was had been a missionary, and she was such a lovely teacher.
Wow.
I was trying to think of her name. She had been a missionary,
Wow.
and
Overseas?
I think she had been in the Orient.
Oh, okay.
She was such a wonderful teacher.
Did you or your sisters play any sports or anything? Or I guess, did girls do that back then?
Well, yes,
Did they
they
get
did.
involved in
I,
extracurricular?
We didn't very much at first because we had to go home right after school.
Right.
We couldn't do, but I guess maybe the, I think my junior, or senior year, I stayed with the Mayors
Oh.
because Mrs. Mayer wanted to know that June because her son liked her.
Which son?
Herbert Mayer.
Oh, really?
And so I never realized, but she wanted to know if I
Was that
coming.
one of Neil's brothers?
Mhm.
Oh, okay.
And so I stayed there for a year, maybe a little in the last year or two. And as far as I know, we got along just fine.
Mm-hmm.
But then they lived about 3.5 miles from Bruce. We got a ride to school. Very often we had to walk home 3.5 miles, which
Mhm.
was not
A long
always
way.
so easy.
I bet you were skinny.
But
and
they had
in
very
good
lovely,
shape.
they had a very lovely home.
Hmm.
And she wanted me to stay there because Herbert was her favorite son. He was, and she wanted to know what this girl was like.
Was he older than you?
No,
Was he about the same age or
Yeah.
younger? He was the same age as you?
no.
Oh, okay.
And so that's a story you probably know the answer to.
Yes, I know the answer to that one. Did you date much? Did you go out with many boys?
No,
Not
I
much
didn't.
at all?
Not many.
But
Of course,
I bet you had a lot of them after you.
well, I don't know that we did, you know, I don't know, because we couldn't hang around in town. you know,
Right,
so.
right.
But the Meyer boys and Irene and I, we went out, did a lot of things because we were the same age.
Hmm. And so you knew them through school or just through the community?
Well, I stayed with them my junior.
But I mean, how did you meet them in the first place, the Mayers?
Well, she knew that her sons were interested in these groups.
Oh, okay, so that's kind of how it started, huh?
And she sure wanted to know. See, Walter went with Lillian.
Uh-huh. Oh, yeah, that's
Yeah.
true. Oh, my goodness. So she just wanted to match up all the boys with the girls.
But Walter was not a nice person.
I guess I didn't realize that.
No, he wasn't. But Lillian married
That Walter
him.
was a mayor also.
Yes.
And Neil, and then it would have been Herbert.
And Herbert was just a fantastic Christian. He was sold out to the Lord.
Oh, good.
And I should have kept all the beautiful letters I got from him.
Oh.
He went away to school in Chicago, you know.
Uh-huh.
What's the name of it?
Wheaton
Wheaton.
or Moody?
No, he went to Wheaton.
Okay.
And then he was there about 3 weeks when he died.
At school?
No, well, he was in the hospital when he died.
Oh, but I mean, it was during that age?
Yes.
Oh, my goodness, I didn't know that.
Mhm.
Oh. Did you ever think that he was the one for you?
Well, I don't know. I don't know. He thought so.
Yeah.
He thought so. I know that.
Hmm.
But he was in the hospital about 3.5 weeks, I think.
And how did he die?
He had a ruptured appendix.
Oh, no. How terrible.
So I never saw him, you know. I couldn't go down to Chicago, but
Right.
Irene did
Hmm.
because she was working down there.
Ah.
And so she came on the train with the body.
Oh.
This was a very traumatic thing in my young life.
I bet it was.
Yes, it really was.
What did you think about? How did it affect you?
Well, I know that
Was
I
this the first time someone close to you had passed away?
Yes,
and-
I think so.
Uh-huh.
And then Mrs. Meyer wanted me to stay there, and here was this body in the. I'll tell you what, I was such a nervous person anyway.
They kept it there in the house?
Mhm.
And they wanted you to stay there in the house too at the
Well,
same time?
yes.
That seems kind of icky to
Oh.
me.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't many days because they had the funeral, but they
Right.
included me in the family
Oh.
when he died.
Oh.
And you know, I was only, what,
17? 16?
yeah, must have been 16, 17. But I had some beautiful letters from him when he went to Wheaton. He- But I wish I had kept them. Just let my children see
Yeah.
what kind of letters a Christian writes.
Oh, yes.
They were just absolutely beautiful.
Oh.
But he planned to go into the ministry or so.
Mm.
And this worried me a little because I knew I would have to go on to college.
Right, right.
So, of course, it didn't turn out that way.
Uh-huh.
So,
So then what happened after that?
well, I went to Chicago to work.
Mm-hmm. And this was after you had graduated from high school?
That was after I graduated.
Okay. And how did you decide to do that?
Because Irene was down there.
Oh, okay. So it wasn't that hard of a decision.
No, it wasn't. And we got work in people's homes.
Mm-hmm.
And for that time, we got much better pay than we could ever get.
Uh-huh.
And we always
Sure.
had a lovely room. 'Cause
Wow.
so
how
I
nice.
really felt
And-
like I was fortunate.
Yeah. So you were cleaned people's homes? That's
Well,
what you did, or
Well,
what kind of things did you do?
Well, sometimes, some places they had a cook. I never worked where I had to cook.
Hmm.
I probably waited on tables and made beds
Mm-hmm.
and that, but I never had to be the cook.
So what kind of families were these that had the maids and the butlers and things? What kind of
Well,
what did they do? What kind of families were they?
Well, the one that stands out to me are the people's name was Butler.
Uh-huh.
And the lady's name was Jessica Peabody Butler. She was an aristocrat from England.
Okay.
And her grandson lived with her.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that his family owned some, I don't know whether it was McCormick or was some, they owned some company where they made, yeah. But it wasn't too difficult. And I stayed for, I don't remember how long I worked there, but I got along fine.
Mm-hmm.
I had to wait on the tables.
And where did you live during that time? Did you live at the house then
Yes.
as well? They had quarters for you?
Oh yes, they had servants' quarters.
Oh my goodness. How
That
many
house-
servants did they have?
Well,
For
they
the two
didn't
of
have
them.
very, they just had two of them. But they had, in the heyday, this place, they must have had many of them. It was called Hill Rise House.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I've been back to Chicago and seen this place which still stands.
Wow. How many rooms did it have? Do you remember?
Oh my. They didn't use the upper floors because it was just this Jessica Peabody Butler and her grandson.
Right. Why would they need it? They had, what, 2 upper floors?
Just two.
Uh-huh.
Well, they had, yes, 2 upper floors.
Uh-huh. So
They had 13 bathrooms.
Oh my goodness.
I said, I tell you, that was quite a house.
I'm sure it was. How did they treat you?
They treated me very well.
Well, that's
And I
good. So
was
they were
young.
very kind people.
Oh yes,
Oh,
it was
that's
just this
good.
old lady,
Uh-huh.
and she was from England originally, and her grandson,
Uh-huh.
he was head of some company.
And
It was some, but they were very wealthy.
obviously, yes. Did they go out much, or did they entertain
No,
much? What do
they
you remember
didn't.
about them?
Because she was probably in her 80s when I got there.
Oh, okay.
And they entertained. I remember one time her grandson lived with her. And of course he liked to have his friends in. I can remember serving pie, and they had a finger bowl on their plate, and before the dessert, that was to be taken off. Usually I bring in the dessert plates. There were just stacks of dishes for every meal.
Oh my.
And I was serving this pie, and they were taken off the plate, and here he put a piece of pie right down in his finger bowl. And it was...
The grandson did?
Well, one of his guests.
Oh!
He was from McCormick or something. They
Uh-huh.
were from these wealthy families.
Uh-huh.
And you can imagine, of course I had to take it off and replace his plate, much to my... See, if they didn't do it, I should have responded.
Uh-huh. That's so funny. What kind of pie? Do you remember?
I don't remember. What was it?
Like a fruit pie? That kind of
I
thing?
don't
Like...
remember.
Oh.
The cook did all of this,
Right.
and I had to do up all the dishes afterwards in the butler's pantry.
Wow.
I didn't do any kettles or anything.
Oh, that's good. Just the dishes anyway. Oh,
But you know, that really, always remembered that
that's
little
so
house.
funny. So what do you feel like that taught you, working in these
It really
houses?
taught
Do you think
me-
it really opened your eyes?
Yes,
I bet
yes.
it did.
Uh-huh.
Talk about that a little bit.
Well, I realized that there were really wealthy people, and they really treated me just lovely.
That's wonderful. I'm glad to hear that.
Never mistreated me, and were always, and in the heydays, this family had many servants. You know, this Hill Rise house had the barns where they had the horse-drawn carriages that went through the front. So
Wow.
it was really quite an outstanding place.
Yes. Was it about the era of the houses that we saw today, or was it older than that, would you say?
Well, I would say it was older.
Yeah.
Because it still had the portico where the horses would drive through.
Wow. Mm-hmm. That's amazing.
And I have been back to Chicago once,
Mm-hmm.
and saw that this place still stands.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's really neat. I'd love to see a picture of
Yes.
that too.
Yes.
If it still stands, that's neat.
So, but it was always good. My sister worked,
Did she work at a similar place?
well, she worked down there too for some wealthy people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And,
So then why did you leave there?
well, I suppose I wanted to go home for a while.
Hmm.